Hello. How's everybody doing? Just checking that all went fine. Happy Text Adventure Thursday. No, never, no crimes? Excellent. Just for copy of Secret Diphthong, Detective Zen, Puffy Butt, Leia Sky, Key Square, Desperator, Star Prelude 6, Llamacore Misanthropy, Goblin Wars, Dark of Nate, Jay Sutton. How is everybody doing today? It is Thursday, March 25th. Minji Moon, I'm alright, thank you for asking. Minji Moon's not following, thank you very much. I prepared dual beverages for today. We'll see how it works out. Staying warned, Goblin Wars. Are you someplace where that is currently difficult? It is beanie weather in the household. Yep. Woo! Shannon Marigold doing very well. Got first of 2 vaccine shots yesterday. Heck yeah! I know for me here in California, today was an extremely good news day because they just gave us dates on the next couple of tiers. Beginning and middle of April, we'll see the remaining sets of over 16s in California able to start trying to make appointments, so I'm very excited. Perhaps the dual beverages can have a beverage duel. Obsequious Deathong says, I was gonna say I didn't do the reading, but looking at the title info, I guess there wasn't any reading. You win. There was not any reading, but as it turns out, if anyone is inclined to do the reading, just check out the article I linked in my Going Live tweet, because we're going to talk about some comic book news. Shiny Marigold says, sometimes it pays to be a lady of a certain age. Cool sunglasses! I love it. Ooh, Tantarlus, you have a new chair with a similar theme? Zen, a month of no COVID infections? That's incredible. Oh. Llamacorn, no poetry, never mind, yay, comic news. Sorry about that. Comics, in an anime stream, it's more likely than you think. So anybody got a cool fact for this week? Anything you learned recently that's making you happy? Oh, Mercury 83, so Dr. Fate then. You know what? I think I forgot to tweet about it. But boy, what casting for Kent Nelson. If they're doing a Kent Nelson. It's funny. It made me realize that when they first announced Benedict Cumberbatch as Strange, I was like, I like him, but he's so young. And I had totally forgotten having that feeling because he's great and I love him in the part. And I'm so used to him now that, like, I had kind of forgotten that whole reaction until they announced Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate, and I was like, haha, there we go. Those, of course, are not the same character, but they're strongly linked by tradition and by fan association. We talked about Asterix and Obelix in chat before tea time. Amazing. You know I love that. Why is there a ghost on screen? Stream's haunted. Click shotgun. What you doing, little ghost? Where did you come from? Are you from a broken feature that I forgot was visible? Ha! Oh my gosh! It's from running a poll, and the poll showing an error because there's no poll going on gives us a little ghosty. Amazing. Alright, so stream can now be haunted at any time. Treated yourself to the Secret Lab Titan Dark Knight Edition. Ooh. Hopefully helpful with my chronic back issues. Oh, I hope so. Oh, Party Twinkles, Laura Bailey just won a BAFTA? That's amazing. Sometimes there's a ghost in the machine. Poll ghost. Well, hi, Geek and Sundry. How are y'all doing today? Were there some Becca games today? Code Cloak says my comics reading this week was Stray Dogs, Once and Future, and Haha. Good picks. Zen says, I learned that Amy can't drink and be shocked by something at the same time. Well, it's not like I'm the only one, thank you. Spit takes exist for a reason. Hi, the Becca Scott. Nifty fact I learned this week, streams can be haunted. We're sharing cool facts, and then we're going to talk about some comic book breaking news from this week. Welcome, welcome. Doing a little Arkham Horror. Excellent. Minji Moon says, found out Gail Simone likes my hero concept today, so I'm happy. If I missed anybody's facts, please feel free to repeat them. Geeky Chappy! Yeah, for first jabs. I miss you, Becca, and I don't think I've told you that I love your hair. Down under door just reset for 14 months. 14 months with the best army. Welcome back to the Enthusi Army. Thank you. Llamacorn, if you did, I've forgotten it. Please tell me again. Renting pineapples. What is a pineapple renting? Polly the Pole Ghost, Fluffy Butt. I kind of love that. Let's bring Polly the Pole Ghost back. Hey, Polly. Hold on, am I looking the right way? Yeah. Nice to see you. Ooh, Leia Sky says I got the Jim Henson Storyteller. This time they're doing Tricksters. Renting pineapples was a thing in olden times when they were rare luxuries to impress one's guests. Then what? You just give them back? Were they decoration? Cool fact, there's a lion in a rescue shelter somewhere who insists on sleeping with a cozy blanket and sitting in, squishing giant boxes. Cats are gonna cat. Llamacoin says, when the toffs of ye olde England discovered pineapples, they became so wildly popular that people would rent one to display at their parties. It took a super long time before anyone managed to grow one in the UK. That's incredible. Polly the Poltergeist, Esperator. That's amazing. Oh yes, Darkham Nate. I believe you can suggest pupper names over for the Nightwing comic right now. Karen W. says they were decoration. That's why a lot of colonial-era American art and decoration features pineapples. I have seen that and observed it, but definitely didn't understand why. Wow. Missing out on delicious. So the expression should really be, have your pineapple and eat it too, as the thing you can't do. Because, like, there's a lot of cake, but apparently not a lot of pineapple. Blue Lynette, that is a less fun corollary, but, yep. The bits about pineapple domination vis-a-vis Hawaii, I'm somewhat aware of, but I don't think I realized the why of it all. That also suggests a reason they became associated with hospitality. Fun! Oh, interesting, Serotonia. Right, Darkham Knight. Yes, Liz Sky, they're making us, they've made a series of comics based on the old Jim Henson Storyteller show, where they pick different sort of mythological commonality points. So, like, series on giants, series on witches, and at the moment, series on tricksters. Ah, Obsequious Diphthong! Interesting. I would be very interested, I bet, like, places to gather the wounded probably evolved in, like, not evolved, but, you know, arose in different ways in different places and times, and I'd be very curious of those traditions. Hi, Brave King. Thank you for the compliment, but we try to... I'm generally... I gotta figure out a way to put the policy into words, but thank you, but no thanks for the personal appearance compliments. Hat compliments, totally fine. Yeah, Blue Lynette, I saw that muslin thread. That muslin thread was awesome. All right, so, that's a cool fact too, Serial. We are here today to talk about some comics news. I don't know if any of y'all saw this, but it's been tearing across the comic book portion of Twitter and the internet. And I'm going to find the link and drop it into chat for anyone who might have missed this. But I was curious if people saw it, if they had any questions about what it means and why it would be important. Where is my own Twitter? Doesn't help if I misspell my name. Alrighty. Oh, Just Here for Coffee says it has been a topic and we had been wondering how to ask for a discussion about it. Great, great, great. Oh. So there is reading, says Obsequious Diphthong. Alright, I am linking, the thread that I just linked is, Heidi McDonald is a veteran comics reporter. She is the editor-in-chief over at Comics Beat, which is my favorite place to get solid comic book news. And so she has been, here's the thing. I am excited to talk about this, but literally, it just got announced this morning. We're still learning all of the details, and I have already learned and then gotten corrections to things on like 4 different levels in like the 6 hours that today has been. Thank you, Sariel, for the follow. So, this grain of salt on everything I'm about to say, it reflects my best understanding as of now, 3 p.m. on Thursday, the day they announced it. So Tony said I saw Jody's retweet of it earlier and all I could do was stare for a moment. Obsequious Diphthong, the question of whether it is a good thing that Penguin and Random House have merged and are trying to buy Simon & Schuster is a separate question, and I've been watching that one roil through book Twitter, and, Monopoly Twitter, in a like, is this a good thing? I don't know how to answer that question. That's a big question. But that has been, until now, a question that didn't feel all that related to comics. Spider Young says, how long do you think Marvel has been planning this? Is it recent, or do you think they've been planning this since Diamond shut down? Okay. So, as of this morning, we learned that Marvel Comics, obviously most of y'all will be familiar with Marvel Comics, they publish and have long published all the adventures of your favorite Marvel heroes. They have struck a deal with the distribution arm of Penguin Random House. Penguin Random House is a giant book publisher, but they also have a distribution arm. So think about like publisher, acquire and put together book from author, give to distributor who talks to stores, and the stores sell you, the customer, the book, right? That's the chain. Well, book publisher has distribution arm, in this case. I don't know all the details about that. But the Penguin Random House distribution arm is striking up a deal so that when Marvel makes comics, rather than Marvel sending them to Diamond, who sends them to stores, Marvel will send them exclusively to Penguin Random House, who then will send them either directly to stores, or they will keep sending them through Diamond to stores. Now, y'all have heard me talking about Diamond a lot, because Diamond, for most of the last couple decades, has been the primary or exclusive way that comic book stores, we call this direct market, i.e. I'm buying a comic book from you, a comic book store. The direct market has been basically a Diamond monopoly for a long time, functionally speaking. And there have been a lot of pluses and minuses to that. On the plus sides, all of your things were through one source. You had one catalog with all that stuff in it. They could easily plan something like Free Comic Book Day and coordinate with all the publishers because they were already carrying them. On the minus, a whole lot of minuses that come from being one monopoly, where you have no choices about anything, really, for getting your comics. But one thing that we always said was, like, nobody else really wanted to get into the sending you individual comics business. So there wasn't really substantial incentive or it seemed like, for other companies to kind of get into that business because, you know, when you are a real company doing giant business, as much as we think $3.99 comics sound very, very expensive, dealing in an entire business where your units are less than $5 and they're incredibly flimsy and your orders might be like, I need 1 of these and 3 of these and 75 of those. But it's really important that I get 1 of this other thing and 2 of this other thing. It's small scale, you know? We often talk about their small margins, i.e. there's, you know, generally not acres of gold to be made in doing this very detailed specialty kind of stuff. Now there's enough, you know, to keep a lot of us going for a long time. But Diamond had been essentially the major way the comic book shops got nearly all of their comics for a long time. And they, about a year ago, obviously, the pandemic stopped the world. Diamond stopped receipt of new product. Now, for some shops, this was a real problem. For other shops who were themselves shut down by the pandemic, it was less of an issue because there was nowhere or way to sell the new stuff. But it threw systems into a lot of chaos. And in the interim, DC Comics at that time made the decision to work with new made-up-on-the-spot distributors to make sure their stuff was still going out for the about 2-month period. And then as they got towards the end of that, announced rather suddenly that their business was going to be shifting over to those new distributors, one of which has since folded, so the other one carries all of that stuff. And that was a sort of seismic event for a lot of publishers, or for a lot of comic book stores last year. For some, it was sort of an easy transition. For some, it involved changing up systems that they had been doing basically the same way for a really long time in the middle of a pandemic. Some people had a lot of anger about it. Some people were like, I can see this as a good thing. It was a complex thing. And it has been true over the last several years that for books, for graphic novels and trades, there have started to be more ways to get those. Independent bookstores have access to different distributors who could get things, who had struck different deals with different companies. But if you were a comic book shop that basically just worked with Diamond, your whole world shifted a little bit. And pretty much nobody else was carrying the actual comic books, your weekly issues of Batman. So with DC no longer working with Diamond, Lunar Distribution, the surviving one of those 2 made-up new distributors, was now essentially the only way you could get. You still had only one choice for DC Comics. It was just this now. So all of that is backstory to today. When we learned via press release that Marvel has struck a deal with Penguin Random House, one of those book publishing giants, to distribute not only their trades and graphic novels, but their actual weekly comic books. And this is pretty big for me, from my perspective, based on what I know, a huge, huge deal. Because up to this point, a lot of the regular book distributors have not seemed particularly hungry to get into the, I am sending you your flimsy weekly pamphlet style comics that cost less than $5, and that makes sense to me as a business to get into. And it seems, oddly, take this with a grain of salt. I know a lot about the comic book industry, but a lot of other people know more, and we will see over time what happens. But for me, it seems like a weirdly healthy sign that a company would want to get into the distributing paper comics business. That was a thing that really stuck out to me about this announcement. I was just like, okay, you want to work with comic book stores and sell us X-Men comics. I'm into it. Now, what this means for Diamond, big question mark. They have issued a statement. They're still going to be carrying it essentially as a sub-distributor. So Random House wholesales to Diamond. Diamond passes on to stores. We expect that will mean, and this is all behind the scenes for you guys, the end readers of comics, it'll probably mean a change in terms, right? It would have to. And we don't know exactly what the new terms will be with the Random House thing. But you'll still have a choice to keep going through Diamond if that works for you and if the new terms make sense, or you can set up a direct thing with Random House. Hey, thanks, Tetsu. Folks are asking about contracts, and a lot of that is not stuff we know. What I think is that DC may have been coming to the end of their contract. There have been rumors for years, as you can read from Heidi McDonald's reportings, of the major companies looking for new arrangements. So I think that I don't know whether it was that their contracts allowed them to set up those temporary distributors, DC's contract with Diamond, allowed them to set up that thing, or whether the exclusivity had already lapsed and they just hadn't done anything about it. I don't know that. Now, one thing I am happy about, as someone who works with a comic shop and has one close to my heart, is that this will not be happening with Marvel's comics until October. So there's a little bit of time to get ready this time, and it's not, happening in the absolute height of everything being shut down. So some slight differences in how this rollout is going to take place, which I find comforting. But yeah. Does anyone have big questions about it that I haven't covered? One major thing to think about is that I'm very curious. I am not personally rooting for Diamond to go away because Diamond also carries a lot of the indie publishers that I love so much. Like, basically nearly all of them. So we still need our Image comics and our Boom comics and our IDW comics and our Fantagraphics and our little publishers like Vault, which is I guess they're not brand new anymore. They're several years old now. But a lot of these smaller ones that are starting to get a footprint, I really want there to be one or more companies offering us the ability to get that stuff. So I don't want them to go away unless one or more options replace them. Dark Horse, obviously. Image, IDW, Boom, Dynamite, basically every other company you can think of is still going to need somewhere to, let us know about their comics and offer them. But if a company like Penguin Random House has decided it's worth it to them to be in the business of sending comics, I would not assume that couldn't expand out to other things. Either the distributor Lunar that we're working with for DC might start taking in some of those indies, or maybe Penguin will start taking in some of those indies, or maybe Diamond will be just fine and they'll be the indie company. Or maybe more than one of those things will happen and actual competition will exist. Serotonia, the Diamond catalog was just so convenient. The era of the all-in-one is probably gone, I'm sorry to say. Serial says, would prices go up if Diamond has to buy it from Penguin Random House before the local comic store sells it? Just a guess from me, but it seems like yes. The owner of Diamond, Steve Geppi, released a statement, and his statement was, we value our almost 40-year relationship with Marvel and are pleased that we will continue selling Marvel products to the direct market and other channels. The change Marvel announced today represents a behind-the-scenes shift in how Diamond interacts with Marvel for certain products, but does not impact our ability to supply our customers with Marvel comics, trades, and graphic novels. This is the Diamond statement. I expect the discount terms under which our retail partners order these Marvel products to change. And Diamond will communicate that information to our customers, well, that's us, the shops, well in advance of any adjustments. While there are still details of this new arrangement to work through, I would imagine, it's brand new. My leadership team and I are committed to making this supply change as operationally seamless as possible for our retail partners, and we look forward to our continued distribution of Marvel products. So it seems as if likely there will be some shift in cost. Whether you will see that on the other end when you buy from stores will depend probably on how much that shift in cost is. Likely it means, the cover price is still probably going to be printed on the comic. If your shop has discount programs, that might be one way they may have to compensate. or there may be something else. We shall see. Noble Lightning is just team graphic novels. Novel comics are the future. I found out last week one of my absolute favorite new comics. It broke my heart. It's going on hiatus, and if it comes back, it's going to be in volume form. And that made me real sad as someone who has loved it in its installment form, but maybe healthier. We're discovering that a lot of comics are finding their audience better in collected or self-contained graphic novel format. Things change, things evolve, new formats come, and telling stories with words and pictures has been going on pretty steadily now for well over 100 years, and for much longer if you count all the antecedents. But yeah, it could be that a lot of things are going to shift to graphic novel. The comic, by the way, is Tartarus. Tartarus is amazing, and I am personally in mourning because they were incredibly good at telling chapter by chapter engaging stories. They were very good at the monthly format, which not everybody is. But I'm sure they will do an amazing job in graphic novels, and that will be fine. And I will love them very much when they come back in that form. Llamacorn says, I hope it's not too much. The closest comic shop to me, 3 hours drive, closed its brick and mortar during the early days of lockdown. It's a hard time to be a little retailer. It is, and the truth is that comic stores have done surprisingly well over the last year overall from what we know about the market. That doesn't mean it hasn't been incredibly difficult and tumultuous, and that the surprisingly well is sort of in comparison to the way everybody expected the absolute worst, circa last year this time. But it turns out people love comics, and that part has stayed pretty surprisingly stable. Maggie May says, having Random House distribute Marvel, will this potentially put single issues back in bookstores and possibly grocery stores? I would say that is a possibility for sure. I don't know how likely it is. I don't speak for, the grocery stores in question, the numbers that grocery stores need, the content concerns they might have, a lot of that other stuff, I don't know. I feel like it would make it, probably it would change a lot of the barriers that are currently standing in between, like, an indie bookstore and getting comics on the shelf. That should be a lot easier this way. Does that mean that they will find it worth it to them? Separate question. Comics take up a lot of space, and they're not very expensive. Displaying them takes up a lot of space. Finding the right mix for your audience of what they're looking for takes up a lot of space, because you would not believe how you can be like, I have a good balance here, and the person who walks in wants the one cool thing that you decided you didn't have room for. Because there's a lot of beautiful, various stuff going on in comics. It's one reason that the rise of comic book stores let indies flourish. Because if you had a whole bunch of space already devoted to that stuff, you could afford to put Love and Rockets or some random upstart indie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you were already devoting a bunch of space to comics, you could kind of work that stuff in on the sides and have it be subsidized, where if you need 85% of your space for every kind of book that exists, you just don't have that much space to devote to comics. So, I think it should open the door to more stores having single issues, especially Marvel ones in this case, make that a little bit easier. I don't think that will change the equation too much. Again, grain of salt. I just know what I know and I think what I think. I don't think that'll change the equation too much for regular comic book stores, because a specialty store devoted to comics is still going to have stuff you don't have in other places, and all of the community benefits that really keep those places alive, because we all know you could be ordering online by now. And apparently people still come because we love comics. Serotonia says, TMNT? Who's even heard of that? All right, what other questions am I still missing? Dark of Nate says, we still have Archie Digest at our checkout counters. Those are how I got some of my first Archies. I love it. Noble Lightning has an MCU question. That's a tough question. I would hate to think long-term that there wouldn't be a T'Challa in the Marvel Universe, but I can certainly understand not rushing to do anything like that. I don't know what I would call that if I were in charge. Blue Linettes is a little bit after my tweet. Spike Trotman is an incredible comics publisher and creator who is an indie titan and owes no one any loyalty because she did everything her friggin' self, which means she freely speaks her mind on every possible issue, and I love it. Retweeted about how awful Diamond was to Iron Circus. Interesting. I had heard a lot about when you were first starting as a small publisher that it could be a really tough road with Diamond to getting yourself carried, to meeting their minimums. There are no shortages of stories about the difficulties there. Variegated Thesis, penguins are giving out Marvel Comics. Yeah, that's about it. Geeky Chabby says, when I was a teen, our local store used to sell a bunch of random comics. A pack of 5 for one decent price. You only saw the front book, so the rest was a surprise. Usually the comics that didn't sell well, but I found some interesting titles that way. There are still folks who do it that way. And I know as a kid, I bought some like random 3-packs at gas stations. I loved that stuff. But, you know, usually that exists because you already have a bunch of stuff no one is buying. So it is a beautiful second life for that stuff. But, Triana says, over here in the Nordics, grocery stores and kiosks are the places where you usually buy your comics. Specialty comic book stores are for untranslated, mostly English comics. Triana, what would you say are some of the sort of bestsellers that you would see at a kiosk? I know a few years ago, when I got to travel to Norway a couple of times, I sort of heard that it was like everybody knew Donald Duck, and most of the rest of it was not as widely known. Even stuff we think of like, everyone knows X-Men. They were like, Down Under Dwarf says, is the distribution of physical comics done separately from the distribution of digital comics? Yes. Good question. So, digital deals are with the various, like, a different set, essentially, of middlemen. So the largest one is Comixology, which was an independent company that's been part of Amazon for the last couple of years. And Comixology has deals with different publishers and then has some of their own Comixology originals, which they've now started making deals, I think, with Dark Horse for some print versions of. But, yeah. So you have a few different sort of ebook and other digital forms in terms of, like, digital distribution. And then Marvel and DC both have their own dedicated digital services now. Marvel Unlimited and DC Comics Infinite, where you can read back archives of some to all of their comics. Blue Lynette said she had to end up creating her own email list to explain Diamond was never going to stock ICC books and how to order them from Ingram. It's funny because we have ordered Iron Circus stuff from Diamond, but maybe like I would love to. I'm gonna have to check that thread out. Just here for Coffee says, I know we're focused on the US distribution system, but it's pretty much the same here in the UK. There's also far fewer local comic book stores, LCBSs, so anything that makes them more accessible could be a good thing if it spreads. I would imagine Penguin Random House has some pretty good international systems set up already. If they can expand those to carry them, that would be great. Let's see. Dark Update says, DC Infinite side note, 60-70s Teen Titans was wild. It sure was. Death Plays WoW followed. Hello! Welcome. Tirama says, currently translated comics seems to be mostly manga and Donald Duck. We had a lot of Marvel and some DC in the 80s and 90s, but it started to die out sometime around 2000s. That's super interesting. Manga, of course, is absolutely huge everywhere in the world, I think. Obviously, that's a generalization and not exactly evenly everywhere in the world, but also an inaugural fact. Lama Crow Misanthropy says, someone mentioned earlier that hopefully this change might see more comics and graphic novels offered to/carried in libraries. And oh boys, I hope that happens. I am sure that there are complications. If we have some of our librarians in chat can speak to them, of that, you know, comic books are not nearly as sturdy as graphic novels. And so I know some libraries do carry individual issues, but there are some challenges there. But But I know librarians have been absolutely essential advocates for comics over the last 10, 20 years, especially as this incredible age of all ages and young adult comics has come to dominate so much of the creativity and success of comics. So anything that makes that easier and more seamless is going to be fantastic. Secret Stipbang says, I wonder if I got into Marvel as a kid because those were just the ones on the display racks I gravitated to. Though that's often the way we find our first faves. Yeah, Dark of Night and Meaning of Night. Talk to your librarians! Finding out what their options are. Side note about digital distribution. Don't forget, your libraries carry comics and graphic novels and often have digital channels for that stuff. Llama Coin says, back in the Wednesday Club days, I requested my tiny local library get in Nimona. It was so popular once they got it that they asked me for more recs. That's wonderful. Key Squared says, we would love to carry singles, but they just don't survive long enough for the cost. Read once and dropped in the external book drop, and it's a 50-50 chance it's now too torn to circulate again, I think is what that should be. The runtime error is now following. Hi, thanks. So Tony says, the library is where I picked up my first comic. It was bizarre and bad. It ended up going on infinite hiatus. But here I am. I'm glad. Key Squared says, so we just get lots of graphic novels. And Sariel says, I've seen a lot more comics available digitally from my library, both through Hoopla and Overdrive. Key Squared says, speaking of, we got a big stack of Kay Lee books this month, and I'm excited. Catley? Kaylee? Aw, Shiny Marigold says, I heart my hip comics carrying library. Trauma says, Donald Duck is Euroduck. The weekly magazine contains mostly stories by writers from the Nordics, and monthly magazine has Italian Donald Duck comics. It's the comic that your parents read to you when you were a kid, and it's the comic that you buy for your kids as well. That was what I heard. Cat, typo. Okay, just making sure I wasn't just, like, not aware of a name change. Yeah. So that's what's up. It is interesting times for the comic book business, but I'm personally kind of inclined to see this as good news. Honestly, I'm as you know, I'm not really hoping for Diamond to go under. I would like there to be lots of robust options, but we already tore the Band-Aid off of only working with one, so we shall see, I guess. It is funny in terms of media conglomeration that it's now like Disney, one of 3 media companies, will just deal directly with Penguin Random House, soon to be Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, one of 1 book companies. Cool. Problem solved. And yet, if they have super useful services and decent customer service, I'm not gonna hate it. We'll see. Discord says poor typing, ironically, because there's a box of books blocking part of my keyboard. Mercury83 says, before I started actively getting single comics, I got John Byrne's Man of Steel series as a collected edition from the library. Had it read before I even left the place. That's beautiful. Jay Sutton said it was fun watching a local library going from 1/2 meter square book of comics. 1/2 meter square books of comics to multiple shelves with so many manga they only had the first 5 Detective series on display. Yes, Gamer Badger. Oh, if you missed the basic news, let me pop it in chat again. Marvel is leaving Diamond. Now, that's only partly true because Diamond will still carry them as a sub-distributor. But Marvel's direct distribution deal is going to be with Penguin Random House, one of the book publishers that has its own distribution arm. I don't know what the technical connection between them is. They could be separate companies with the same name. Please don't quote me on that. But yeah, it won't be happening for a few months, so we have some time to figure it out and prep. But it is big news. Oh, Llamacorn, thank you. PFW Scott says, my local library has a whole manga section and a Western graphic novel section. Filed in youth, but it exists. It's where I got Sandman. I guess sometimes that stuff happens because that's just who has the budget and the interest to get it to happen. But, a little funny to be like, Sandman, only for youths. Yeah. This was really fun, guys. Carrier Penguin. Oh, Zather. It is a Carrier Penguin, isn't it? Oh, Gamer Badger has good associations with Random House. I guess vis-a-vis their treatment of Pratchett. That's nice. Dark of Nate, still very annoyed that my nearest library is still using the alphabetic by writer last name sorting for the graphic novel section. The sorting is a challenge. Title, publisher, multiple authors, it does get a bit complicated. And like we always talk about with labeling comic book series, everything has pluses and minuses, and there's nothing that sort of purely solves all the problems. What years? What did I say? Oh, just what years like comic book labeling? Yep. Figuring it out as we go. Blue Lynette says, yeah, library was good for things like Vertigo titles, but I had to take a 2-hour bus ride to a shop that carried Finder. And of course, it's always changing and growing. New companies come in. We don't know which ones will take off with people and which ones won't. Libraries even less so, since they need to make decisions that last for years, whereas we can sort of take a chance on some new release and have it on the shelf for a week. Triana says, I borrowed my first Judge Dredd comics from the youth section in the local library. It was like, should I be reading this? Judge Dredd is for the children. So Tony says, I don't know. I think we should label comics like Avengers does. Have 3 different systems for deciding what year to call something. Kia Squirt said, we realized recently we had a couple of books that were shelved in different places depending on the printing because they swapped the order of author names on the cover. Oops. You know, it's tough. Complicated problems require complicated solutions. For the children. Just highlighting this because I'm at 300,000 points now. Thank you, Mercury. All right. So we shall see what comes of it and how things are organized. And what it means for comics in the long term. But that's today's big news. Obsequious. Any last questions? And then we're going to go on a break and come back for some King's Quest. Lamacorn says, thanks for this. It was fun. I'm so glad. I know it's deep, wonky stuff, but we talk so much about stuff like that. That I figure if anyone had seen the big news and wondered, ideally, if you're just reading comics, you don't need to know any of this. The shops will make it easy on you. The digital venues will make it easy on you. But it's just fascinating stuff. Reader Monkey, when I was young, I happened across the Exiles Volume 1 from the library. I've been rereading it lately for the nostalgia. That's amazing. Coin says, if there was ever a Twitch channel for the deep wonky comics discussions, it's this one. Yay. Feathers Flight missed it. Okay, one more time for... We'll pop that. This is the news that we're discussing. And side note, when you want analysis on this stuff, like Heidi and Comics Beat, I really recommend. Oh no, again! Thank you, Lavacorn. You have my back always. Zather, find your people, crush the weak. Oh wait, no, not that part. Dimetrodon, y'all. All right. This was a blast. Thanks for hanging out. For earth-shattering, hopefully invisible to the consumer, comic book talk. Now, after a short break, I will be back, and we gotta solve some King's Quest situations. Because I think we may or may not have found ourselves with another, little bug. And everybody read Tartarus, because it friggin' rules. I'm so heartbroken it's on break. Why am I using a command to go on break? That's not how that works. Alright. See you in a few, okay? Nope. That wasn't it. There we go.